Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank the organizers and all the participants because it has been a wonderful exchange. So I'll share my screen. Please let me know if there is any problem. And I will read with much without delay, because I have a lot of data Camila collected to share with you. So when Jair Messias Bolsonaro was elected in 2018, a phrase borrowed from the resistance to the military dictatorship in the 70s came back to life among Brazilian feminists through a drawing you see in this image by tattoo artist Teresa Nardelli that became viral. No one releases anyone's hand. Here you see it on the carnival at the Paraíso do Tuiuti parade. The military dictatorship that ruled Brazil from 1964 to 1985 engaged in a white supremacist project that equalized development with whiteness, fostering policies aimed at reducing the country's Black population, the mass murder of young Black men by the police, and mass sterilization of Black women through tubal ligation, surgeries often carried out without the consent of the operated woman. In 1992, Brazilian Parliament promoted an inquiry which revealed that 45% of Brazilian women, mostly Black, were irreversibly sterilized. And even though these numbers have receded in the last decades, mostly due to the participation of Black women in public debate since redemocratization, cases such that of Janaína Aparecida Querino, who lived on the streets and was submitted to forced sterilization in 2017, show that eugenist policies regarding the reproductive rights of women are still relevant in our society. Here I show you a picture of a police officer in a Rio de Janeiro favela. You see in the second plane a girl with a baby, and these police officers, they dress like they are going to war. And here in São Paulo, you see the police doing the George Floyd move with a little boy. I experienced something like this myself with my children. We looked, of course, we are white, the police doesn't do this to us, but we had to intervene, and my son was scared, and they said, oh, but we have to go there. We can't let this happen before our eyes, and look the other way. Well, as a consequence, the struggle for reproductive rights in Brazil is twofolded. On the one hand, white women such as myself fight for the right for a safe and legal abortion. On the other, Black women fight mainly for the right of having children and of not having them assassinated by the state. This divide caused by racism was clearly expressed in 1987 in a document produced during the collective effort to elaborate a democratic constitution after the debacle of the military dictatorship. It reads, "It is forbidden to the state the implementation of any natality control projects. Abortion will be decriminalized in the terms stipulated by common law." Of course, this hasn't happened yet. It is not surprising, thus, that dictatorship enthusiast Jair Bolsonaro attacked Brazilian women's reproductive rights in both fronts during his presidency. Throughout his political career, birth control for poor and Black women by means of sterilization has always been his main agenda, and I repeat, his main agenda. His first campaign for the parliament in 1991 was focused on birth control for poor women. 15 years later, in his own words, and I quote, "The combat to hunger, poverty, and violence must be based on birth control." Then, in 2008, he declared in the parliament that he had a dream. He used Martin Luther King's formulation, and that his dream was to implement a birth control policy in Brazil. In that same year, he said, and I quote again, that poor women have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 children, and the bill must be paid by society, by those who work, end of quote. Of course, he supposes poor women don't work in Brazil, which is the falsest thing he could say, of course. Then in 2011, he literally said that, and I quote again, there must be a means for ignorant people to control their offspring because we control ours, end of quotation. In 2013, he said that there can exist in Brazil such freedom that anyone can just have as many children as she wants. And this was a quotation again. Well, Bolsonaro is a religious fundamentalist, and religious fundamentalists, as bell hooks taught us, consider controlling female bodies as a necessity, as a priority. And Bolsonaro is also a racist, who notoriously said that his sons would never date a Black girl because they were well educated. And for a racist, the path from birth control to genocide is indeed a steep downhill. During his presidency, Black pregnant women mortality due to COVID was twice that of white pregnant women. Violent deaths caused by police officers surged, and in this, as many as 75% of the victims were Black, often Black children. 50% of the country's population is Black, so here you see the distortion. In 2019, 1 year after he was elected, mortality in police actions was 183% greater for Black people. On May 25, 2022, Genivaldo de Jesus Santos, a 38-year-old Black man who had committed no crime, was murdered in a makeshift gas chamber when police officers locked him in the trunk of their patrol car with an armored tear gas bomb inside. Against Black population, supposedly non-lethal ammunitions are converted instruments for genocide. It is no coincidence that Bolsonaro imitated Hitler's haircut, the motto Deutschland über alles, Brasil acima de tudo, and Benito Mussolini's Deus, Pátria, Família, God, Homeland, Family. Of course, since Bolsonaro was elected president, there were also many attacks on Brazilian women's meager rights to a legal abortion as well. According to Brazilian scholar Deborah Diniz, who has researched abortion in the country for almost 3 decades and was forced to leave Brazil in 2018 because she was suffering death threats, 20% of Brazilian women have an abortion at some point of their lives. Sorry, I had COVID and I still have terrible, terrible bronchitis. Brazilian women, 20% of Brazilian women have an abortion at some point of their lives, which sum up 500,000 women every year, and half of these procedures lead to hospitalizations. Brazilian women have the right to abort in only 3 cases: those of rape, pregnancies posing a life threat to the mother, and this was regulated in a 1940 law, and fetal anencephaly, when the child has no chance of surviving. And this was regulated in a judicial decision by the Supreme Court in 2012. The fact that most abortions in Brazil are illegal amplify the impact of racism and social inequality on women's health. Whereas white middle-class women have access to online information about methods and can pay to have the procedure done in a private, though clandestine clinic, Black and poor women are submitted to risk procedures that often lead to hospitalization, incarceration, and even death. Oops. Since 2019, over 30 projects aimed at further restricting the right to abort have been presented in the Brazilian parliament. Insecure abortion leads to the hospitalization of 50% of the women who resort to them, and this impacts Black women disproportionately. According to a 2022 report by the Law School of University of São Paulo, Black women are 3 times more prone to die due to pregnancy complications, including abortions. Another study showed that while 3 women die for every 100,000 illegal abortions, we have 5 deaths for Black women. 60% of women sued for having aborted are Black. Therefore, while the right for free abortion is not the main focus of the Black feminist struggle in Brazil for reproductive rights, it is a subject that still should be investigated intersectionally, a concept to be understood, in the words of Brazilian Black scholar Carla Cotirene, as, and I quote, analytical lens about structural interaction in its political and legal effects, explaining the access of white adult women to particular clinics and safe abortion conditions, which of course are not available to Black teenagers, for example. Back in the 80s, Black scholar Lélia Gonzalez was already very clear in her defense of free abortion. I am favorable to legalization because simple decriminalization will not solve the problem of low-income women who will remain without medical assistance. In a country like Brazil, we need to have abortions done by the public health service. I continue quoting, legalization is more coherent with our proposal, even though decriminalization is already a step. Yet, the states should assume the task of raising awareness among women about contraceptive methods, offering free and high-level medical assistance in the case of abortion. End of quote. Neither legalization nor decriminalization has been achieved in the almost 40 years since Lélia gave this interview. Abortion still is an enormous taboo in Brazilian society. Public discussions on the theme tend to occur during elections promoted by right-wing candidates. In 1989, during the first presidential elections after Brazilian redemocratization, Lula's opponent, Fernando Collor de Mello, came up with an interview by a former girlfriend of Lula, who said he had asked her to abort. Even though the impact of this move in the election result is disputed, it is widely considered that Lula lost that election because of it. In 2000, when feminist candidate Marta Suplicy was running against right-wing Paulo Maluf for the post of São Paulo mayor, he had outdoors made in capital letters that read, "Mommy, please vote for the candidate who is against abortion." Marta won anyway. Then in 2010, Dilma Rousseff was viciously attacked by her right-wing opponent, José Serra, for her pro-abortion rights stance. But in the end, it turned out that Serra's wife had previously had an abortion herself, and then the discussion faded. Brazilian feminists then kept a tactical silence during the episode in order not to jeopardize her campaign, and Dilma was elected Brazil's first female president. Abortion was not made legal during her presidency. It was expected then that when far-right extremist Jair Bolsonaro was elected, attacking women's right to abortion would be a priority. And a key figure in this government of destruction, Minister Damares Alves, was behind many of the most vicious attacks on human reproductive rights. An homophobic religious fundamentalist, anti-human rights, A true menace to native Brazilian children and vocally to women, Damaris could easily be mistaken for a Handmaid's Tale Gilead officer. Infamous for saying in a defiant tone that yes, she believed boys should wear blue and girls should wear pink, often portrayed in memes by the Brazilian left, by sectors of the Brazilian left, the risk posed by Damaris Alves, now elected senator, was and still is all too real. Some episodes raised public awareness because they are just too absurd. In 2020, Damaris Alves attempted to halt the legal abortion procedure on a 10-year-old girl who had been raped. She got personally involved in the case and sent representatives to talk to the girl's family, even with her grandmother, and as well as with the medical staff. In the end, the procedure was done. I put here a map of Brazil. But in Pernambuco, here, 1,700 kilometers from the girl's home, which was here in Espírito Santo. Because all the doctors refused to do this in the state where the girl lived. Very active on social media, Damaris, along with another right-wing extremist named Sarah Giromini, who was known as Sarah Winter, another Nazi reference, urged her followers to stand in a vigil by the doors of the hospital where the procedure should take place. The girl had to enter the premises hidden in the trunk of a minivan. They yelled she was a murderer for days and days and nights. The child was exposed in the most disgusting way. Not only she, her family, and other patients at the hospital were disturbed, but even her name was widely publicized. As for Damaris Alves, she said children should wear tight underwear in order to avoid being raped. Brazilian society responded. This is a charge by Laerte, a drawer we deeply love, in defense of life. And solidarity networks were formed. A group of feminists, I show you here, they are all wearing masks, unlike the Bolsominions. They connected through the Pernambuco Women Forum and managed to expel the fundamentalists from the hospital vicinity, granting that the girl's legal right for a safe abortion was enforced. Also in 2020, a decree was issued by Bolsonaro's health ministry, binding medical teams to inform the police in the case of legal abortions, and to offer the patients the possibility of seeing the fetus via ultrasound. Imagine this for little girls who had been raped. The decree was judged unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. In 2022, a 10-year-old girl in the state of Santa Catarina, let me go back to the map. Here, Santa Catarina in the south, who had been raped in her own home, had her right to a safe abortion denied by the University of Santa Catarina Hospital in Florianópolis. The girl was then kept in a shelter for over 40 days by Judge Joana Ribeiro Zimmer, say her name, in order to prevent her mother from taking her to the hospital for the legal procedure. In the end, the girl had her right for a safe abortion granted, albeit unnecessarily delayed, with the ensuing risk for the child's physical and psychological health, thanks to the intervention of federal attorney Daniele Cardoso Escobar. Another girl, 12 years old, from Teresina, here in Piauí, was forced to have 2 babies after multiple rapes by her uncle inside her house as well. In the second pregnancy, Judge José James Gomes Pereira halted the procedure, even though she spoke clearly to the medical staff about being constantly raped at home. The girl attempted suicide. In 2022, Bolsonaro's Ministry of Health released a booklet entitled Technical Attention for the Prevention, Evaluation, and Practice in Cases of Abortion. This document, which stated that there exists no legal abortion, which was false. I just told you there are 3 cases in which it's legal, and that every abortion is criminal, proposed that all pregnancies, even those issuing from rape, should preferably be taken to term and the issuing child eventually given to adoption. I repeat, this was a booklet by the Ministry of Health. If the decision of the raped woman was to have the abortion, police intervention was mandatory, which of course poses a threat to many women and girls subject to violence in their own homes, neighborhoods, and workplaces, not to mention the cases where rapists are police officers themselves. In the case of death risk to the mother, the booklet required a written evaluation of the situation by 2 doctors, explaining the kind of threat posed by that pregnancy, further recommending that one of these doctors should be a specialist in the alleged condition.
Anastasia, sorry that I'm interrupting you. I gave in the minutes we had on over for the last, but could you make some or one concluding phrase so that perhaps some questions can be posed?
Okay.
It's dramatic, yeah.
Bolsonaro lost, we won. That's my final remark. Here you have Sonia Bonagajazara, who is Minister of the Native Peoples, and Aniele Franco, sister of Marielle Franco, who was assassinated. So thank you.